Hello and welcome to another weekly Royal Reviewer live chat. As always, the format is exactly the same from week to week. If you have any royal related questions, just type them in the chat box that you can see, and as soon as I read them I will try and answer as best I can. So first of all, my first job of every single week is to find the chat box. So this is how I normally do it. I've discovered that I can go into my live Hangouts on Air. So I broadcast these chats through Hangouts on Air, which is affiliated with YouTube. So that's their official way of broadcasting live events. So I just go on that, and then hopefully I should be able to see a box that lets me into the chat. So just waiting for that to come up. It's been an amazing week, another voluptuous week in the real life, very busy. Lots to report on, and also lots of different interesting things that I thought of that you might like to know. So we'll talk about those in a moment. And of course we have our book club. We'll be doing the book club first. Just so that you know that each week the book club is always going to be first. So that if you don't want to watch the rest of the chat and you're just here for the book club, you know it's pretty much straight into the book club. Okay, here we go. Open live chat in a new window, and I should be able to see all of you. Just waiting for it to pop up. I was amazed last week about how many people were here. I couldn't almost keep up with the questions. Aha, here we go. Jason Lewis Young says, sorry Elliot, I'm working again. I have an 18th birthday party tonight at the hotel, but I will watch on catch up when you're finished. I'm sure we'll probably see you sneak back for a sneaky chat. So we'll probably see Jason later. Hi Beck Terry, she says, I'm sitting here in bed, 6 AM at the Pan Pacific Hotel. Husband's booked a mystery weekender for myself and our kids. It's 6 AM and they're all asleep. I had to hotspot my phone to get on here. Well done for being so inventive to get on here. And wow, I am amazed by your mystery weekender. I would love to go on one myself. Please tell us all about it. Stacey Lamb says, hello Elliot, I have a cup of Earl Grey and Girl Scout cookies. Well, today I have my tea, but I actually have it in a different cup. I have it in my Liberty of London cup. And Liberty is a really old historical department store in London. And if you can see the cup, it has the picture of the building on it. So it's an Emma Bridgewater cup, for anyone who was wondering. I do collect Emma Bridgewater pottery too, which is quite popular in the UK. Will says, looking sharp, thank you very much. I'm wearing a tie today. I don't normally wear a tie. Chelsea says, hi. Hi, Chelsea. And Van Al says, hi, Elliot. Hope you're doing very well. Hello to you too. And I've forgotten your name again. Is it Candice? Steve says, hi, Elliot. Hi, Steve. Dawn says, good evening, the Duke of Shropshire. I hope you've had a great week. I have. I hope you've all had fantastic weeks too. Van Al says, you're wearing the Canadian maple leaf. I am indeed. Here is my Canadian maple leaf. And I hope you can see the shine on it, because in real life it really glitters and shimmers. It's amazing. I love it. I just felt like wearing the maple leaf today. In fact, I was going to wear the Elizabeth star brooch, but I changed my mind at the last minute. I was really feeling the Canadian maple leaf. And of course, lots of talk of Meghan Markle and Harry this week, or rather recently, within the last couple of days. So, you know, with the Canadian connection there, I think I was just feeling the Canadian leaf. Caroline says, hello, Elliot. Tried to get to the book through my local library. They didn't think they can get it. I should know soon. Well, don't worry. We are only a few chapters in, so you can probably easily catch up if you can get it. And yes, I got the name right. It was Candice. There you go. See, I'm learning all of your internet handles and your real names. There you go. I'm quite impressed with myself for remembering that. Dawn says, I tweeted you a picture of my cup of tea. I will check my Twitter in a moment after the book club chat. So yes, if you want to tweet me anything while we're live on chat, and we can all interact with it, it's Royal Reviewer or Royal_Reviewer on Twitter. So find me, follow me, tweet me, I don't mind. So shall we jump straight into the book club? So here we have the book. It's written by the Queen's cousin, Margaret Rhodes. It's a #1 bestseller, and it's called The Final Curtsey. Now, Margaret Rhodes has sadly passed away, so there was a shortage of books in the UK. It took me ages to get one, but it finally came through, and we set the chapters at the first 2 chapters. So we're going to talk up to chapter 3. So please, take a few moments and let me know exactly what you thought about the first 2 chapters. What did you think? One really interesting thing that I thought really kicked off the book nicely was that they included a family tree. So we got to see all of Margaret's family tree, which of course was the Strathmores, the Elphinstones, and the Plunkett family dynasties. And it's really interesting to go back up the family tree and see where everyone connects. So I really love that they included that. I also like, and it's quite a good idea. I don't normally see this in books, but they included pictures, printed pictures on the page. They do have some glossy pictures. I'm sure you've all skipped to have a look. But I quite like the black and white pictures they included on the page too. So I'm just going to quickly have a look, see what you're all saying about the book. Dawn says, I would love to get that brooch for our 150th birthday, July the 1st. I will be wearing it on the July the 1st chat, which is actually a Saturday. So I will be wearing it. Steve says, the first chapter was sad with the Queen Mum dying. Yes, it was. But it also provoked a question in my mind, which I'll get to in a moment. Beck says, yes, the family tree was very helpful. It was. Going back to Steve's point about the Queen Mother dying. Well, it brought me on to the fact that she lived at Royal Lodge in Windsor, but it made me think about when Margaret died, because when Margaret died, she was living in a house that she was allowed to stay in by the Queen, which was the Garden Cottage. So now Garden Cottage is actually vacant. So who in the royal family do you think might be allowed to live in Garden Cottage? Will it go back to being a staff property, or will a member of the royal family be allowed to live there? I think possibly could be Harry, maybe Meghan. If he hasn't bought Waterhall, which I still think he may have, but if he hasn't, perhaps he could live in Margaret's Garden Cottage. Who knows? That was just something that came up from the book that made me think. But yes, I loved the upstairs downstairs section of the book because I love Downton Abbey, and I loved hearing about her aristocratic life, and also how it was the end of an era. And of course, to her way of life was completely normal. Margaret grew up in Carberry Tower, which was a big posh house in the countryside, which is now actually, if you go onto the internet and you locate Carberry Tower, it's now a hotel and conference centre. And you can actually, when she's talking about the rooms, and she says that she would never go back there because she wanted it to stay how it was in her mind, when she's describing the rooms, if you go to the Carberry Tower website, you can actually see what they look like now. So I did a little bit of my snooping and I went and had a look at what Carberry Tower is like now. And you can see the drawing room with the fireplaces, you can see the bowling alley, you can see the grounds. So they did a good job in converting it, by the way. And I think Margaret probably would have been impressed if she had have gone back to see it, but I can understand perfectly well why she didn't. But if you want to go on the Carberry Tower website, go and have a look, because it really brings to life what she's describing. And of course, I loved all the old photos. I particularly loved the one where she was with her Labrador Glen at Carberry Tower. That was really good too. And I can't get over how much she loved shooting and hunting, which of course is quite a touchy subject in the UK. We have had certain animals have been on a hunting ban, so it's quite a contentious subject, but she was really into her hunting, and she was obviously from a time period when hunting was very popular. So yes, I've really enjoyed it. and about hearing, like I say, about all the upstairs and downstairs. I'm just going to read a little bit now about what you think. Dawn says, in the foreword, Margaret states that suddenly she was a celebrity. Was she really a celebrity in the UK? Well, not being around at that particular time, I think celebrity is always subjective of the time. You know, people that weren't born when Marilyn Monroe was alive might not see her so much as a celebrity. I think obviously if you're photographed and you're in the media with the Queen, or not the Queen, the Queen Mother, who was the Queen at the time, and a princess, an heiress presumptive, then obviously you're going to get some kind of notoriety. So I think she was well known. I don't think the modern way of looking at celebrity was quite how it was back then. I think you would just be a well-known person, an aristocratic well-known person. Dawn says, that was my next question. Who is in the house now? Well, obviously, she's only recently passed away. So I'd imagine it's probably being renovated, or plans to have it renovated, and possibly Harry. Who knows? Or maybe even Beatrice or Eugenie. Could Zara have it? Who knows? Beck says it's research, not snooping. Nancy says, I found Margaret's description of the Queen Mother's final hours fascinating. Yes, it was indeed. She was sitting up in a chair until almost the very end. Amazing feat for a dying woman aged 101. Indeed, very remarkable. And I was really pleased that, you know, Margaret could be there and that the Queen got there. So Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, wasn't lonely when she died. And they reckon that she could still hear them, because one thing that was quite poignant was when Margaret said that she felt the Queen Mother squeeze her hand. I thought that was quite a lovely moment. Beck says she did mention about the hunting, that the animals were considered pests. That made me feel a bit better. Yes, of course, she did say that the animals that she was shooting, if there was too much of a population of them, they would run out of food and then they would die a slow, painful death. So it was all part of the culling process to make sure that the animals that did survive were healthy and happy. So I can see why they did it. But in the UK, hunting, even if you've got a justifiable reason, is probably, you know, considered a bone of contention. Loretta says, good evening, Elliot, I made it. Hi, Loretta. And Dawn says, me too, about the animals. Steve says, I like the last paragraph at the bottom of page 46 about the Queen pulling rank. Yes, that was funny. I did enjoy that. And also hearing about the honeymoons as well. So, so the Queen and Prince Philip had their honeymoon at Burke Hall, which now Prince Charles and Camilla are in. Freya says, I would say Margaret was a celebrity in the sense that Charles Spencer or Pippa Middleton was a celebrity. You've got to remember the media wasn't the same back then. No Twitter, no internet at all, which means no Facebook. The world news was a lot slower to get from place to place. So things were a lot more private. So I think celebrity in the sense, you can't judge celebrity how it was then to how it is now. But certainly I think she was well known. Stacey says, I feel starting with the Queen Mother's death set the story well. Talk about how her life was with Margaret. I agree. And it was a very hard-hitting, punchy way to start the book. There we go. Jamie says, hey, I'm a bit late. Hi, Jamie. Better late than never. Stacey says, while I was reading, I could imagine myself having tea and listening to it. Wouldn't it have been wonderful if she'd have done an audio book? In fact, I haven't checked if she has. But it would have been fabulous if she'd have recorded an audio book of it. Then we could have listened to her as well. Or even if she'd have been filmed reading it, that would have been good. Beck says, you missed Dawn's question about the Almighty. Let me go back. Right, I'm going up. Oh, I did miss it. Chapter 1, page 3, last line says, however, the Almighty usually gets the right people to be born first. Right, that was pretty much about saying that Elizabeth over Margaret was probably... Margaret was considered, Princess Margaret I'm talking about now, was considered probably to be more charismatic. And probably more of a celebrity of the day than what Elizabeth was. But Elizabeth, being a very sterling character, a lot more serious than Princess Margaret was, probably was the right person to be born first with that. But also, in her own life, she was probably, you know, thinking that her order, her family tree was probably born in the right order too. Hope that helps. Dawn says, chapter 1, page 6, when Margaret was asked what the Queen Mum's husband's occupation was, are you... Yes, that was a laugh out loud moment, because you could just imagine the scene. You could just imagine her going there to register the death, and then this stony-faced, you know, administrator behind the desk turned around and said, occupation, well, what do you say? What do you say about your previous husband's occupation? He was the king. And it did make me laugh out loud. Jamie says, how was the crown, you tearful ball of mess? I have watched up to episode 6 now of The Crown, so episode 7 next time. I didn't cry at episode 6. Yay! One episode I didn't cry at. It was a really good episode. I really enjoyed it, but it didn't have a heart-rendering moment that made me cry. Nancy says, another poignant passage involved the Queen Mother's letter to Margaret's brother, who was a prisoner of war. She ended up not sending the letter because she feared the pleasantries would make him more homesick. Was that in the bit that we've just read? I'm not entirely sure. That might have been a later bit. I can't remember that bit. I'm only up to page 54, so let's not talk past beyond that point. Give it away. Helen says there are some YouTube interviews with... Oh, is there? I will look. So apparently there are some YouTube interviews with Margaret. We will have a look. Stacey says, I laughed too at the question about the occupation. Dawn says, yes, it did help. I guess I missed that it was in reference to Princess Margaret. Well, I believed it was. When I was reading it, it seemed to me like they were talking about Princess Margaret. Candice says, I loved how Margaret Rose was given strict instructions on how to behave when Queen Mary visited, and yet she was still confused on what came first, kissing the Queen's hand or cheek or curtsying. Well, they probably didn't tell her. Well, they told her, but she got confused. I mean, they probably didn't drum it into her as best they probably could. But of course, their family friends, so they probably just let it all slide, and it was okay. Julia says, why are you not drinking alcohol? It's a Saturday night. I don't actually drink much alcohol, really. Champagne at weddings or Christmas, but you know, special occasions, birthdays. But as a rule, I don't really drink. I'm quite happy with my cup of tea. But you're all welcome to your favourite tipple when you're watching the live chat. Nancy says, another funny moment was Princess Anne's comment about why the royal family stopped the debutante ball. Yes, of course. There always used to be a debutante ball, which was the coming out of aristocratic young ladies. So they would sort of do the season, and then they would come out and be presented in front of the king and queen, which sort of, you know, advertised them as ready and available to start their own lives. And of course, that was considered to be outdated. And when the present Queen came to the throne, she stopped it. And of course, obviously, at the war, it was put on hold during the war. Will says, how long until the questions portion of the video? I might grab a snack. I'd imagine we're going to get there relatively soon. We have only read 2 chapters, but we do need to set next week's chapters as well. Jamie says, the part I most found heart-wrenching in The Crown is when the king dies and the royal standard immediately comes down. And it will be the same with the Queen. As soon as she passes, wherever she is, whatever household she's in, the royal standard will be lowered immediately when she passes. Unless, of course, Charles is there at the same time, because then, well, it may be put to half-mast, actually. Peck Terry says, that was hilarious, it was. Dawn says, my opinion here is, I think it was awful that King George V did not help his cousin Nicholas to safety. He even said, chapter 2, page 12, I was devoted to Nicky. Guess not devoted enough, like I said. Well, I think he took advice from the government. And I think he thought by not accepting his cousin, he was probably helping his country. If you see what I mean, I think he was probably thinking that Nicholas, Tsar Nicholas, would have been a draw for possibly assassins and bombs and all kinds of things. So perhaps he was taking advice from the government of the day and trying to preserve his own people. So I think it was again a question of duty before heart. I'm sure he would really, well, he did actually want to save him to start with. He had to change his mind because of government advice. Elaine says, do you know what his favourite tipple is? I'm not sure about William. I know what the Queen's is. The Queen's is Dubonnet and gin, mixed to a certain percentage of Dubonnet and gin. But I'm not sure about William. I know his favourite cake is, it was some kind of chocolate cake. He loves chocolate cake. But I'm not sure about his favourite drink. Jamie says, I find that so spine-tingling. Dawn says, chapter 2, page 35, sounds like Harry Potter reference to the Grey Lady. Oh yes, the ghost. How could we forget the ghost? And the room with the monster. I did find that rather interesting. And of course, to a small child, which he would have been at the time, you know, the tale of a monster or a ghost would have been terrifying. I would have been terrified. I don't like ghosts now. Jamie says, if I were around, I would punch Tommy Lascelles in the face. That's from The Crown, so we're kind of skipping. Tommy Lascelles, he was just old school royal aide. But we'll get to him. We can talk about him when we talk about The Crown. Freya says, I don't believe the royal standard can ever be flown at half-mast, given it's a symbol of the monarch. Well, I was thinking, if Charles was in, say, let's just say the Queen died at Windsor Castle, and Charles was also there, the royal standard has to be flown wherever the monarch is. So immediately when the Queen dies, Charles will be king. Out of respect, I could imagine it could possibly be flown at half-mast. Of course, don't forget there was a public outcry when the flag wasn't flown at half-mast at Diana's death. There could be a similar outcry when the Queen goes. So perhaps it could be a new tradition. I'm thinking that maybe a new tradition could be brought into the fore when the Queen dies. I think it might be half-mast if Charles is in the same building. Dawn says, are there any descendants, relatives left from the Tsar? I think there was. I watched a programme once where, but you have to go right back up the family tree and then down again. But the immediate line, no, they murdered them all. But if you go back up and up the tree a bit and, you know, left and right on the tree and then go down again, there are descendants. So they did actually pinpoint one person, I forget who it was, but they did trace one person about who would be the rightful Tsar if it was ever restored, just the same as they have done in France. They know who the person would be, who would be the next king if it was ever restored. Elaine says, Sandringham is open in part to the public during the summer. Yes, it has. No, I haven't been, but I have seen videos on YouTube where people have been. But again, that's another place I would love to go. And if ever I went up to Scotland, I would love to go and see the Royal Yacht Britannia too. Freya says his children were killed with him, so as far as we know, the Tsar does not. No, his immediate line is completely wiped out. But like I say, if you go back up the tree far enough, you get to a branch where you go down again and you can find an heir. Elaine says, I know Diana used to go for long walks along Hunstanton Beach nearby. I have been there. Yes, she did. She did. And I think I spoke about one of her beach walks on one of my videos, about when she used to stay with James Hewitt in his mother's cottage. So if you look on the Diana playlist on my channel, and you'll be able to see the cottage and click on that video, and I think I posted pictures of the beach. I think it was that beach. Nancy says, Margaret brought to light something I had never heard before about the Duke and Duchess of Windsor. After the Duchess died, many Christmas cards, yes, many Christmas cards from Queen Elizabeth were found, quashing rumours of a grudge. Well, I mean, I'm not necessarily sure that, I mean, were they addressed to just him, or were they also addressed to her, the Duchess of Windsor? But possibly they were addressed to both of them, and of course she extended Christmas wishes to all of her family, including the Duke and Duchess of Windsor. But I did note that that was very interesting, and it did quash a few rumours. H.A. Bracken says, I've been watching some old newsreels, and when George VI died, the flags were at half staff, but Elizabeth was out of the country. I think that going forwards, like I say, if Charles is in the building, I think a new tradition may be spawned, and I think it will be half-mast. But we will see. If Charles isn't in the building, I think it will go completely down. I think the flags over all government buildings will be at half-mast, but I think symbolically it may be lowered completely if she passes. But if Charles enters wherever it is where she dies, I think it will be half-mast. Freya says, the claim to the Russian throne is disputed between Maria, I'm not even going to say the names, and Andrew Romanov. So Maria Romanov and Andrew Romanov. I did know it was somebody, but yes, so it could be either of them. I'm not quite sure where the dispute goes with those two, where the ambiguity is, because usually it is either one or the other. So I'd have to look that up. Dawn says, they said they did rescue more after. Not direct line, but cousins. Wonder how many of those are left, if any. Again, I don't know. But it would be interesting. And like I say, you know, in France, they know who the rightful heir would be. So if ever it was reinstated, they could have a king or a queen. Steve says, isn't there a theory that the Tsar's daughter Anastasia survived? I don't think she did. There was a theory, but no, I don't think she did. Elaine says, I didn't realise we could visit Royal Yacht Britannia. Yes, you can. It's open to the public all year round. And you will look at my playlist. Thank you, Elaine. But yes, you can. It's in Edinburgh, is it Neath Dock or Leith or Rafe? It's in a dock that's nearby Edinburgh. And if you look on Google Maps, you can see it. It's permanently berthed there. And it's pretty much how the royals left it, minus some of the furniture. Fuzzy Puppet says, I didn't get my book yet, but I found some parts of the first couple of chapters. I was struck by Margaret saying she was in awe of the Queen, even though she had known her all her life. Yes, of course. But then again, you always have deference to the monarch. So although you might have known her for a very long time, she's still the queen, which is obviously in a position of power, which could be quite intimidating, especially for a young girl. Freya says all the bodies of the Romanovs were found, so there's, yeah, all the immediate family were completely killed. That is true. Jamie says he's just made a cappuccino. And Jamie says, I did know it was somebody. Of course it was somebody. It's always got to be somebody. Freya says the ambiguity of the Romanov claim is the fact that women were not allowed to ascend the throne. Aha. So, yeah. So, like our Queen Elizabeth, the current Queen, amended the line of succession rules so that, for example, if Princess Charlotte would have been born first, she would have been the heir to the throne above Prince George. But obviously Prince George was born first, so that didn't have to be enacted. But I suppose to find a solution to the Romanov problem, they would have to come up with some kind of law to say whether the firstborn or the male firstborn should take the throne, so to speak, if ever it was reinstated, which I'm sure it won't be to Russia. Helen says, will Charles be king apparent or in waiting after Queen Elizabeth goes and during the time until he is coronated? As soon as the Queen dies, he will be king. Of course, he won't be anointed until the coronation, but he will still be king. Legally and in any other way, shape or form, he will be king the moment the Queen is pronounced dead. Will says, are there any members of the royal family that are suspected of being gay? There was a member of the aristocracy. I did do a video on it, but in terms of the immediate royal family, I don't think so at the moment. In the past, I think there was, but at the moment, no, I don't think there is. Laura Saylor says, I don't think Charles and Camilla should be qualified to be the next king and queen. Well, first of all, there is no qualification. You are just born into it if you're born into it. And as for the church's involvement with how it would be, I'm sure some people will say that their union isn't valid because she was a divorcee. I think in modern times that will not stand up. I really don't. I think what's acceptable in today's culture has shifted. You know, ordinary people who are divorced can get married, and I don't think people, in a way, they want the monarchy to be set on a pedestal and they want them to be different to us, but at the same time they want them to be able to be by the same rules as everyone else. And if it's okay for a member of the public to get married after they've been divorced, then I'm sure it will be acceptable for the royal family to do the same, because after all they do represent the people that they are monarch of. So I don't think there will be a problem. I think they will be, well, certainly Charles will be king, and I'm sure by law Camilla has to be queen consort. That is how the British legal system defines the wife of a king, is queen consort. Laura says, I don't, oh, I've read that one, I'm going to move down. Fuzzy Public says, I thought it was interesting that Margaret's parents placed more importance on her brother's education. They always did, because in those days it was just expected that women would be wives and mothers, and especially aristocratic ladies, because they weren't ever expected to take jobs or to run the estate. It was always supposed to be the man that would do that. You say, in The Crown, it seemed that Queen Elizabeth didn't really receive a very well-rounded education. She was educated, she can speak fluent French, but she wasn't educated with other children. So socially, she was probably a little bit limited, and she certainly didn't see a lot of For example, what Diana wanted William and Harry to see. She wanted them to see, you know, the grittiness of life. So they did grow up knowing, you know, what a homeless shelter was. The Queen didn't know that, but she did live through the Blitz, so she knew about, you know, about life and death. But it hasn't done her any harm, and she's been, you know, arguably one of the most successful monarchs of all time. Jamie says, I wonder if you met the Queen in private as a friend, would you prefer if you curtsy or not? I don't think she would actually bother, but I think it's probably, her friends probably use personal choice. I would imagine most of them probably do. Elaine says, are William and Catherine keeping their Norfolk home so they can get away from London at times? Yes, that's their country property. I'd imagine once they've moved to London full-time, they'll probably go there for long weekends and school holidays. And probably Christmas as well, when the rest of the royal family are at Sandringham. Oh, by the way, before we finish the book club section of the chat, and I know we've spoken about other things too, that's okay, I don't mind, but we need to set how many chapters or what chapters we need to read up to for next time. So have a think and we'll decide. Steve says, why is it that Edward V and Edward VIII, yes, are considered of Kent, have been privately separated for years? Hang on. The screen just jumped and I've read half of someone else's question and half of your question. Let me start again. Steve says, why is it that Edward V and Edward VIII are considered kings, but Matilda and Lady Jane Grey are not included as queens? I think that's probably to do with the coronation aspect. They weren't coronated, I don't believe. Lady Jane Grey lasted 9 days, and I'm not entirely sure how long Matilda lasted, but it wasn't that long. So possibly it's because they weren't coronated. Freya says, I read somewhere that the Duke and Duchess of Kent have been privately separated for years. Yes, they have. They have a really huge aristocratic mansion, and they both live in separate wings of it. So yes, they're still together, but they are separated. Joanne says, the Queen learned how to work on trucks. Yes, she did. That segment when it was in The Crown, when she spoke about knowing what to do with the car when it broke down, she did learn towards the end part of the war how to service and maintain the operational vehicles. So she does know how to be a mechanic. Laura says, but the monarchy represents the church and the church does not condone adultery. Don't forget that the Queen is the head of the church. So technically, she could, you know, that's why Henry VIII wanted to be the head of the church, so he could do and make it whatever he wanted. It was to his will. So, you know, if the Queen accepts it, and she did sanction the marriage, of Charles and Camilla, then it's obviously gone through the Church of England because she is the head of the Church of England. I hope that makes sense. Candy says, I can't imagine having an estate that takes 2 hours to walk around the perimeter. That's such a monstrous size. It is, but how much fun! I would love to have an estate so big it takes 2 hours to walk around. I really would, because I like walking, and that would be amazing. Will says, if the church kicked out everyone who committed adultery, they would have no congregation. I'm sure it would be greatly diminished. Jamie says, I love when Catherine said the Queen leaves little presents for George and Charlotte. That's so cute. Of course, she's a loving grandmother and she loves her great-grandchildren too. So of course we would. Oh, Stacey's come back with perhaps we should read another 3 chapters. So that would take us up to chapter 7. So do we think 3 chapters? Would that be reasonable? That would take us, where are we going? Let's find chapter 7. So that would take us up to page 148. So from 54 to 148. And if anyone hasn't got any objections, we could just go with that. Freya said Matilda and Jane are disputed monarchs. Edward V was disputed as well, but he was legitimised as a monarch by the Tudors, of which Edward V's sister was matriarch. Edward VIII was not disputed as king. I still think a lot of it has to do with the coronation aspect, but also there was, in Lady Jane Grey's case, there was doubts over the legitimacy, as you rightly said, of the will made by Edward. And of course a counterclaim by Mary. Mary came down, Mary won, Mary got an army together, as I recall. She marched on London and Jane submitted. And of course Mary did actually want to save Jane, but it was she couldn't do it. There were supporters of Jane, and the only way to quell the support for Jane was to kill Jane, and that's what happened. Elaine says, I read the Queen's biography, can't think of the author, but it was in the last 2 years, and you literally couldn't put the book down. I think I have the one. I forgot the author, but I think I have got it upstairs. Elaine says, I'm joining your book club. I shall have to get up to date. Yeah, just if you can get the book, The Final Curtsey by Margaret Rhodes. We're reading up to chapter 7 for next week. So anyone who wants to get the book and catch up, please do. Loretta says, I saw a photo of Prince Harry and Meghan at a wedding. Glad to see they are out and about and living their lives and growing closer in their relationships. What are the Brits saying today? Well, it's in the papers, it's all online. I made a video about it. We knew that Harry had gone to meet Meghan. I didn't make a video on that because I've made a video of them meeting before and it was very similar. We didn't know why they were going, why he was travelling to see her, but just to spend time with her, we presumed. But then obviously it came to like there was a wedding they were attending. So he'd gone to meet Meghan, and Meghan had joined him in Jamaica for a wedding of Harry's friend. So Meghan is being involved with his friends and family life. So of course, you know, that kind of is saying that their relationship is strong, and it's probably stronger than some people gave them credit for. Freya says, if a monarch was to come to the throne and call themselves Matilda II or Jane II, that would effectively legitimise the reign of Matilda or Lady Jane. Well, they'd certainly have to come up with something, whether or not, well, it would raise the issue of the question of were they legitimate. So that would have to be defined, and then at least we would get a definitive answer on it anyway. Joanne says, by the way, I loved learning the Queen's secret handbag signals. Yes, that's come to light this week as well, that the Queen has certain signals that she does by using a handbag. So if she switches her strap from arm to arm, it means that she wants to be, she wants to change the conversation, she wants to move on to a new person. If she twiddles with her wedding ring, it means she wants rescuing pretty quick. So, you know, that must be when a conversation is really difficult and she probably hasn't got a lot to say to somebody. Or maybe she's been offended. I don't know. I mean, she would never say that she'd been offended, but if she was and she wanted rescuing, she would twiddle her ring, and somebody, a member of the royal staff or a lady in waiting, would come and, you know, either whisk her away by saying someone else wants to meet her, or somebody would go to the person or group that she's talking to and say that someone else wants to talk to them. So that's how it works. Also, if the Queen puts her handbag down on a table, it means that she wants to go in about 5 minutes time. So there's all these different signals that she does with her handbag. And of course she always has the same type of handbag. It's a Lorna handbag. She does have different models, but they're all Lorna handbag. Launer. You can actually go to their website and you can buy the same handbag that she has. Although she does have hers customized, she has the straps longer and she has matching glasses cases and all the rest of it. And she also carries in her handbag a hook so that she can hang her bag from a table rather than setting it on the floor, which is all very interesting. And of course, if you watch the video, I go into detail about the sorts of things she has in her handbag. And there's also one photo where she's applying lipstick. And if you remember last week, I said, well, she's probably got some cosmetics, maybe a compact powder and a lipstick. And what a good guess, because sure enough, you can see her taking out of her handbag a lipstick and she's applying lipstick. So I was right. The Queen does have lipstick in her handbag and possibly a compact as well. Beck says, if we've read chapters 1 to 2, wouldn't another 3 take us to the end of chapter 5? You know what, you're right. I didn't mean 7. Page 90. You're right. Why did I say 7? I have no idea why I said 7. Yeah, so shall we say up to chapter 5, which would, well, up to chapter 6. Because if we read 3 chapters, that's chapter 3 read, chapter 4, chapter 5. So that would take us up to 121. And that is correct. Jamie says, I don't think the Queen is happy. She didn't have a lot of happy moments in public. What do you mean? I think she certainly looked all smiles recently in her recent. I think she's definitely smiling a lot more these days than what she used to. Beth says, I really enjoyed the Queen's handbag video too. Will says, if you had to pick a husband for Princess Eugenie, who would it be? Oh, I don't know. Oh, that's a tough one. Trying to pick anyone's love interest is always a hard one. I think I'd probably like her to, probably so that she hasn't got the same problems that her mother has had throughout her life. I would pick someone who's independently wealthy so that she doesn't have the complications of having to be a working royal, so that she hasn't got to have a normal job and earn money that way. I think I'd pick someone that's just independently wealthy. Maybe one of Richard Branson's boys, maybe. Sam Branson. Cheryl says, I would love to see William be next king and not his father. I think everyone has their differences of opinion on that, but it will be Charles unless Charles dies before the Queen. Laura says, by the way, what is the name of the book so I can get it? It is Margaret Rhodes, The Final Curtsey. Margaret Rhodes being the Queen's cousin. Steve says, is the Queen's biography by Robert Hartman? Yes, it is. That's the one. Stacey says, I feel the Queen was unhappy she wouldn't be living to such an old age. I think she's been quite happy in her life, obviously, as all lives have. There are ups and downs. But I think on the whole, she's been fairly happy. Steve says, do you think the Queen will change her secret signals now they have become known? No. I don't. I think she'll stay with those signals. Helen says, funny to think, but maybe applying lipstick could be a signal. Well, no, if you've seen the picture, it's definitely not a signal. She definitely wanted to apply lipstick. But yes, really funny thought. Freya says, my top 3 picks for Princess Eugenie's husband would be Prince Christian of Hanover, Prince Philippus of Greece and Denmark, and Charles, the Earl of South Esk. I'm not quite sure what their ages are, But yes, certainly someone aristocratic, independently wealthy would probably be suitable. And titled. I'm sure her father and mother would quite like to see her with someone with a title. H.A. Bratton says, are you interested in the other European royal families? I'm interested, but not as much as the British. Obviously, if there's something about them, I will watch or read. But there's so much going on with the British royal family that I haven't got the time to cover Europeans on my channel too. I could make probably 4 or 5, British royal family videos a day if I had the time to do it. So I think the channel direction will still be going British, certainly until I get any more time available. Jamie says, what does the Queen do with all the flowers and gifts people give her, or toys for George and Charlotte? I think some are given to the people who they're meant for. All gifts are recorded and logged, and the flowers, I do believe they are distributed to local nursing homes or different charities where flowers might brighten up someone's day. Some are taken back to a royal house if they're close by, or wherever the Queen might be staying, but some of them are redistributed. I don't think they're just chucked and wasted. They are given back to organisations and old people's homes and that kind of thing. Helen says, no, not the divorced Prince of Denmark. Joanne says, I do find the Swedish family interesting, especially with all 3 children of the King and Queen marrying since 2010 and having children. Stacey says, I'm having connection issues. It's been really windy here, and I will catch you later. I'm really sorry to hear that. It was really windy here last week in the UK. We had Storm Doris, and Doris blew everything away. Fuzzy Puppet says, I wonder if Chelsea or Cressida have any regrets or jealousy. I don't think so. I don't think they were suited to the life, which is why they aren't still with Harry. They're too much of a free-spirited characters and natures. Will says, I want to set Eugenie up with Rick Hoffman. We'll just marry the entire cast of Suits into the royal family. Interesting thought. Joanne says, they all seem happy too, which is nice. Of course it is. Whenever marriages go well, it's really good. Cora says, a maple leaf is a wonderful compliment for your fans here in Canada. Thank you. As I said earlier, I was really feeling the Canadian maple leaf. I was getting vibes from it. When I was trying to choose which one, I just got vibes from the maple leaf box. So here we are with the maple leaf brooch. Jamie says, where was the Invictus? Where was the Invictus Games video with the Queen filmed? Looks like a nice cozy room. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure. I didn't read up on that particular story because I was going to make a video on it in the first place. So I was saving it to go back to look and redo it. So to be honest, not entirely sure. But I will hopefully be going back and doing a roundup video because so much happened this week. I'm going to go back and do a weekly roundup of what the Queen's been doing this week and what Harry's been doing and what William and Catherine have been doing because so much has happened. Joanne says, I too love the maple leaf pin, especially being from Canada. Thank you. Don't worry about being late, it's fine. No need to apologise. Bet says, can't wait to see you buy and wear the Aussie wattle brooch. That's the next one I want. And in fact, after next week, I'm out of new brooches to wear. And of course, I can rewear them week on week, but I do want some new ones. And the next one I wanted was the wattle. So I really want it. And if you've gone onto my Twitter, I did post a side-by-side shot of me and the Queen wearing the same double bow brooch. And you can actually see what fantastic replicas they are. Of course, mine aren't real diamonds and the Queen's are real diamonds, but just look at the detail they've gone to. You can't tell them apart. I mean, it's literally as if I've had the double bow brooch on long-term loan from the Queen. They're stunning, they really are, and I would really recommend them. Um, 888 Fruit says, "Hi Elliot, what do you think of Mr. Robert Brown, the man who claims to be a princess?" Oh my goodness, that story. I read this one and I wasn't going to report on it. But they obviously need to do a DNA test. And it's the same thing as the man in America who claims that he's going to be king after Elizabeth dies. I mean, you need some kind of evidence for this kind of thing. So I would say come forth with some kind of evidence. Of course, the royal family probably won't do a DNA test. They're above that, but he would have to have some kind of proof or evidence. Freya says, Rain Spencer's mother said Rain was a daughter of the late Prince George, Duke of Kent. Again, it's one of those family things that, you know, secrets are taken to the grave. No one entirely knows. Helen says, not everyone is cut out for a hard working royal life. And it is hard work. It is. I think people often see them as, oh, it's just attending an event. But a lot of work and preparation and a lot of hard graft does go into it. And supporting the charities and things from behind the scenes as well. It does take a lot of time and effort. And of course, you lose your privacy as well. So there's a lot to give up and it doesn't suit everyone. Helen, you're completely right. Jamie says, going to go, see you again. See you later, Jamie. Thank you for coming and watching so far. Beck says, love reading the Queen's Diamonds. You can wear the wattle both ways round. You can. And actually, one thing that I probably didn't notice when I did the opening video of these is that on each of them, there's a little hook at the top, a very discreet hook, so that you can wear them as pendants. So if I had a chain, I could wear this as a pendant, or you could hook it onto you know, a pin and wear it high up here, or you could even attach it to something and wear in your hair. So that's a nice little feature. So you can switch it up and wear it in lots of different ways. Will says, Princess Margaret would have gotten an abortion. She'd had no time for any of that. I would, yeah, I mean, in those days, probably she would have done. Dawn says, so many loonies will come. Yeah, there will be lots of loonies that will come forward with lies to get 15 minutes of fame. You're completely right. And unless they can justify them, then, you know, they aren't going to come to anything. One video I will be making this week, I've had my latest copy of Royal Life magazine, so I will be doing a opening video of this, and I can't wait to open it. Okay, do I have any more questions? Please let me know. Fuzzy Puppet says, I always thought it was ridiculous when stories would come out that Prince Harry wasn't Prince Charles's son. Yes, it's completely ridiculous. Diana wasn't even seeing James Hewitt at the time that Harry was conceived. And then when you look at photographs of a young Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, you can see so much of Harry in him that there's no way he's anyone other than Charles's son. It's completely impossible. Will says, I miss Tara Palmer Tomkinson. Of course, Tara Palmer Tomkinson, a high society friend of Prince Charles and William and Harry's, who passed away, sadly passed away. She did have a benign brain tumour that was all sorted, and she died of natural causes. And of course, her funeral happened recently. So yeah, it's very sad, and I'm sure the royals were sad too. H.A. Bracken says, I'm old enough to remember when Margaret was a young woman and it would have been difficult for her to hide her pregnancy. I totally agree. You know, and in those days they used to, if somebody was famous or, you know, well known in the public eye, they used to hide them away if they were pregnant. So I think it would have been hard for her to have hidden it, because she'd have been missed. They would have recognised that she'd have been out of sight, or there would have been something, and somebody would have found out. Fan HRH says, will the Queen be able to use these signals so everyone knows what they are? I think so. She'll probably just be a little bit even more discreet. You know, she might do it behind her back, maybe. I don't know. But she'll come up with something, I'm sure. And of course, not everyone will have, you know, heard this story and watched, you know, read anything about it. So I think she'll carry on using it. Freya says, do you think Diana, Princess of Wales, would have remarried had she lived? Yes, but I don't necessarily think with Dodie. I think she would have had a romance with Dodie, but I think he was her, you know, he was her newfound freedom boyfriend, and I don't think he was the one. I think they'd have had a bit more of a long-standing fling, but I think it would have fizzled out. I think she'd have, you know, wanted to concentrate more on her new role that she was evolving into on the world stage. I think she would have remarried, but, you know, to whom, we will never know. Would she have had any further children? We will never know. I do, interestingly though, think that round about 2005, when Charles and Camilla got married, I do think that perhaps that could have been an opportunity for Diana to gain back the HRH and perhaps have a change of title. Because of obviously the complications of having the two Princesses of Wales, I think Camilla would still have taken the title Duchess of Cornwall, but I think perhaps Diana could have been given back the HRH by way of the Queen issuing letters patent to say that any mother or any divorced parent of a future direct monarch should remain a HRH. That would have given Diana back the HRH, and to solve a problem of having a Princess of Wales and then a Princess of Wales that's using a different title, they could have given Diana a new title, and she could have been made a Duchess in her own right. So she could have been the Duchess of Sussex, or something like that. So she could have been something like Her Royal Highness Diana the Duchess, or Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex, which would have worked. So I think, you know, if we've got a crystal ball and a time machine, we'd probably find something like that would have happened. But of course, that's all pie in the sky. We will never know. Just speculation. Van says, people will now be watching to see if she's interested in a conversation or not. I agree. People for a little while probably will be watching. Elaine says, as Harry's getting older, he's starting to look very much like Prince Charles. I agree. It's the eye area, his eyes and nose. It's very Prince Charles. And also the facial expressions he pulls. He does have lots of Diana's facial expressions, but also around the eyes, very Charles. And he also looks like a very, he looks like the Duke of Edinburgh, his grandfather, totally. Especially with the beard. There was, I did a video about them looking very similar. So again, if you go to the Prince Harry playlist and scroll back quite a bit, you'll see that video, and you can see the comparison of a bearded Prince Philip and a young bearded Harry, and they are, you can't tell them apart. You really can't. Dawn says it will make people more attentive into what they're talking about and maybe more careful. Well, there you go. If you engage the Queen and you don't ask silly questions, or, you know, if you get her engaged, she won't twiddle her ring or switch her handbag. Freya says, in my mind, Diana would have found a nice, unassuming, aristocratic man and they would have settled down without children. I think Diana liked the spotlight, which is okay. There's no shame in that. I think she had a taste for the world stage, and I don't think slipping away into obscurity was ever going to be her style. I just can't see that. And Freya thinks that she might have been living at Chatsworth. And again, an unassuming life. I don't think that was Diana. Fuzzy Puppet says, I noticed Harry uses the last name Wales. Does anyone in the family use Windsor as a last name? Basically, if you are a non-royal, so if you're non-titled member, if you're a descendant of Philip and Queen Elizabeth, then and you don't have a royal title, you can use Mountbatten Windsor as your surname. Now, of course, Harry is a prince, and his titular designation, which means where his father title is from, so his father being Prince of Wales, Harry was always Prince Harry of Wales. So in adulthood, he is his real name's Henry, so he's His Royal Highness the Prince Henry of Wales. Now, if he gets married and he's given a dukedom, he will drop the of Wales part of his name and he will just be known by title alone. So let's say he gets the Dukedom of Sussex, he will be His Royal Highness the Duke of Sussex, and he won't use of Wales or Wales as his surname. It is fairly complicated, but I hope that helps. And again, I did do a video on that fairly recently, if you look back in the playlist. Helen says, having a hook brooches could be worn on a ribbon more manly. Don't know what that. Yes, you could quite easily put a ribbon through it, or you could wear it on a sash or something. Dawn says, I agree, she should have been HRH as the mother of the future king. I think round about 2005 that could have been achieved had Diana still lived. And of course, you know, time moves on. You know, Charles and Camilla were getting married. I'm sure as a bit of a trade-off, you know, Diana could have been brought a bit more back into the fold and, you know, used as, you know, in the capacity for the royal family that she was when she was married. I think it would have been a suitable solution to the whole problem that she was given back the HRH. And the Queen wouldn't have lost any face either over it, because all she would do, as I said, is just issue letters patent to say that she's decided that any mother or father that's divorced of a future king of the country or queen of the country should be HRH. It would have been a pretty simple, straightforward letters patent, and it would have solved the whole problem. Helen says, Will's other child really looked like Diana. He did. But I can see a lot of Prince Edward in him now. So obviously from the Queen's side. Freya says, I would have liked to see Diana created Her Royal Highness, the Princess Diana, in the same manner in which Philip was created Prince Philip. Again, that could have been a possible solution, one that could have been looked at, but alas, we will never know. Dawn says, I hope William will give her back her HRH. They could I mean, actually, if William was to issue letters patent to say that any divorced you know, parent of a future king or queen should have the HRH, and if he issued it retrospectively, say for the past 100 years, that would include his mother. So he could give his mother back the HRH, even though she's no longer with us. It's a possibility. Or he could, you know, when William becomes king, if Diana would have lived, she could have been known as Her Royal Highness, My Lady the King's Mother, which was a title held by Margaret Beaufort. when Henry VIII became king. Helen says, ironically, Prince Harry actually looks like Henry VIII. I think it's the ginger beard. Will says, season 2 of the FX series Feud will focus on Charles and Diana. I hadn't heard that, so that's something to look out for. Elaine says, Prince Philip was handsome hunk when younger, and as an elderly man, still very smart and elegant. I agree. He was rather dashing when he was young. Helen says, Di was really coming into her own in public, becoming very capable as Catherine is now. I agree, she was still finding herself. And Steve says, I hope Diana is posthumously given back the HRH at some point. I would say that's a possibility. Definitely. Beck says, incidentally, husband finally located the Victoria series and brought it with us to the Mystery Weekender as your surprise. It's really good. So yeah, watch it. It is really good. I enjoyed it. And there's also that bit of upstairs, downstairs in it too, which is really good. Freya says, I would like to see Harry made Duke of Albany. The title has a bad connotation, having been reclaimed under the title Deprivations Act, but it was a traditional title in Scotland for a second son. He could be. There are several dukedom titles that he could take. Let's not rule out one being created. There could be one being created, but he'll probably take one that's already in existence. It's been muted, probably Sussex. Although they could surprise us. Fuzzy Puppet says, if Prince Harry became the Duke of Sussex in the future, how is that selected? And why would one royal dukedom be selected over others? Probably that's the next biggest one. And it's probably personal choice as well. You don't know. Harry may even have expressed a wish to have that one, years ago, because it was muted. He'd have Sussex years ago. But of course, he's just waiting for the right girl to get married to actually use it. Mariamy says, great, fantastic, you're very elegant tonight. Thank you very much. I've dressed up with a tie. I don't normally wear ties. And I have a new jacket. Guitar D'Souza says, if you scratch a part of your body in front of the Queen, let's just point down, is what you're saying. What will she say? Well, I'd imagine she'd be twiddling her ring round until it flies off her finger, if you were pointing to that. Okay, do I have any other questions? Please let me know. As always, type your questions into the chat box, wherever the chat box is for you, and I will try to answer. Guitar D'Souza says, great answer. Thank you very much. Freya says, royal dukedoms are completely precedence-based. There's no reason other than that some dukedoms are usually selected for royals. I would agree with that. Elaine says, I thought you looked very nice this evening. Thank you very much. Lots of compliments on the look. Fuzzy Puppet says, would Harry have any responsibilities in Sussex? No, they wouldn't have responsibilities unless the clear my throat, unless the title came with land. If it did, then he'd have to manage land, such as the Duchy of Cornwall. But if it's just a title without land, no, there'd be no responsibilities, but he would be looking to forge a link. So he'd probably take on some patronages of charities in Sussex, and he'd probably do lots of tours of Sussex and really get involved with Sussex, but he wouldn't have any specific responsibilities for it. Guitar D'Souza says, does the royal family have any say over Brexit? No say over it, although the Queen will have to sign it off. So whatever the government decides in all of its debates, whenever the final act of signing out is put before the Queen, she will sign it off, and then we will be out. it will become law. Freya says, I'd like to see Buckingham be made a royal dukedom. Oh yes, like the Duke of Buckingham. It has been a standard dukedom in the past, but given Buckingham Palace, it could be used. To be honest, I haven't thought about Buckingham. Well done. Yes, I think he'd be a great Duke of Buckingham. Just as Shropshire isn't a duke, and I would like to be the Duke of Shropshire. That would be my choice for me. Beck says, I like it when you put your hair up in front. I do sometimes. It's down today. Just showing off my hair. Will says, is Meghan your... Yes, actually, she is my favourite girlfriend of Harry's. I think Cressida and Chelsea were, for me, a little bit flouncy and a little bit airy, and they were good time girls. They weren't really serious. I couldn't see them doing a royal role. Meghan shares a lot of interests of Harry's. She's a lot more grown up. She's a lot more, I could see her doing the role, basically. So yeah, she is my favourite of his girlfriends. Elaine says, William and Catherine and Harry are doing a brilliant job raising awareness of mental health. Yes, especially for young people. That's one of their key causes they support through the Heads Together Foundation, which is a charity that they all support. Dawn says, I would like to see Buckingham again as a dukedom. Maybe I can have a title then. Wouldn't we all love one? We really would. Will says, you should marry Eugenie, and then she can be Princess Eugenie, Duchess of Shropshire. It would have to be created. There you go. That's one way to make me the Duke of Shropshire. And Beck's agreeing. Guitar D'Souza says, what happens if the Queen wants to take the 10 Downing Street property from the Prime Minister? It's not the Queen's to take, even though the Queen is the head of the country. It's government owned, so she couldn't take it as such. But then if she took it, where would she put the Prime Minister? Where would the Prime Minister go? They've got to go somewhere. Greta says, how active is the Duke of York in Yorkshire? I think he does visit. I mean, obviously, it's not going to make headline news whenever he visits somewhere in Yorkshire, but he does visit, when he gets a chance, and he probably pencils in lots of visits, supports charities up there, but it's never going to make headline news, Duke of York visits York. It's never going to be. The same as Prince Charles. He does do a lot in Wales. He does visit Wales lots. He has a home in Wales, a whitewashed Welsh cottage. But it's never going to make the big headline news. Freya says, I've never seen a royal date such an established, focused woman before. She's a really clever lady. I mean, you've got to give her credit. She's educated. She's interested in other things. Yes, you could say, if you look at the fashion and the glitz and the glam and the fact she's been on TV, and she's done other things to get noticed in the past. But ultimately, she is a very smart lady. And yes, I agree, a great choice for Harry. Fuzzy Puppet says, it will be so nice to see Harry and Meghan joking. Joining William Catherine as a foursome. Yes, it would. That would be really great to see. And of course, you won't stop the media scrutinising and comparing the two for their fashion. But it would be lovely for them, for the two couples to be able to, have fun together, and the brothers, as brothers William and Harry, have a really lovely relationship together. And it would be nice to see Catherine having a counterpart in Meghan. And I think that would be very good. Freya says, I guess Sophie was established as well. Sophie was a bit more low-key. She was in the media lots when she first came on the scene. But yes, again, a very smart lady, independent. And of course, she's grown into her royal role too. Guitar D'Souza says, does it not annoy everyone that they get paid for doing nothing? I think most people, well, certainly that watch my channel, would know from the videos that I put out there that they don't get paid for doing nothing. They do lots. I mean, you've only got to look at all the videos that I make about what they get up to on a weekly basis, and that's only half of it. I mean, you know, I haven't got the time to cover every single thing they do. And of course, there's lots of things that we don't see, that aren't public, that are behind closed doors. And of course, we know, I mean, everyone who watches my channel knows that the royals don't actually get paid. They don't get a wage. Any money they receive because they do royal duties is from the Queen. So they don't actually receive a wage as such, as they do in Europe. Lots of European monarchies get paid. You know, if you're a working royal in a European monarchy, you typically get paid about £1 million a year to be a working royal. Our royals don't get that. They just get the cost of their royal duties paid for by the Queen, and possibly a grace and favour home, and some money from trust funds that they've inherited from their family. So, you know, a lot of work they do is charity based, about helping other people. And if you take, for example, the Prince of Wales's charity, the Prince's Trust, that has raised over its conception in the 70s, I think it was, it's raised hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions. And I'm not exaggerating. If you go, you know, research the figures, they're out there. And when the last time I looked, it was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds it's raised for good causes, and young people in particular, disadvantaged young people. So, you know, just imagine where those people wouldn't have been if it hadn't been for the Prince setting up the Prince's Trust, for example. And that's just one charity from one royal. And if you amass everything that they do, then you get a much bigger picture. Steve says, what would Harry do more apart from William and Catherine if he marries? He'd just do more royal duties. He'd just take on probably a larger role with Meghan. Freya says, the government actually make a profit off the Windsors because of the huge amount of money they earn from the Crown lands. I would agree with that sentiment. Aaron says, when I saw the Queen in person, her skin was beautifully smooth. I wonder what her secret is. She does have impeccable skin. And of course, she's always looked after it as well. And, you know, stayed out of the sun and done all those things that you really should do for your skin. Probably really good skincare. Will Dawson says, gotta go. Peace out, bro. See you, Will, and hope to see you next time. Steve says, I wouldn't say they do nothing, pretty much give up their lives to be royal. They don't really have any real privacy. They are working all the time, especially the Queen. I agree. How many, you know, 90-year-olds are still working and still, you know, taking on the strain that they did when they were in their 20s? You know, there's not many. Guitar D'Souza says, why do the Queen Guards wear stupid hats and shoes? If there was an attack, they would fall over and be blind. It's ceremonial. It dates back. It's tradition. And of course, they do have their guns and things, which are real. They are loaded, just in case. But of course, it is mostly ceremonial. And people, when they come over, they want to see the big Busbys and have their picture taken with them. But yes, the answer is pretty much it's ceremonial. But the guns are armed and they could shoot. So I wouldn't go up to one and call it a stupid hat. Elaine says, our royal family, in my opinion, is the envy of the world. I would agree. You know, when people think about the monarchy, or when people say the Queen, they think of Queen Elizabeth. They don't think of a different Queen. It probably is the most famous in the world. Helen says, about Meghan, it's a lot trickier than one might think. It would be wonderful for Harry, but is it good for her and her family? I'm not so sure about her family. They would obviously take on a lot more press attention. But I think it would be good for her, because I think she does have quite a conflicting life. She likes to be in the spotlight. She also likes to do her charity work. So being royal is good because you get the spotlight and you get to do the charity work all as one job, whereas in her present life, they're very separate. And she says that they conflict. She really wants to be doing the charity work, and particularly in Africa, which also Harry shares a passion for. And then she finds it a struggle to go back to the glitz and glam. And you know, when she's been in Africa, feeding starving children, and then she's in, you know, a gown going to an award show. She thinks they conflict, and I would agree. Whereas if you're royal, you can actually do both. You know, both are two halves of the same coin. So I think it would fit very well. Elaine says, I'm so proud of the royal family. I think we all are. Beck says, the thing that they don't have, the thing is they don't have a choice. They don't choose to be born into it, and very few choose to not do their duty. I would agree. Freya says, agreed, Elaine. And Helen says, I think Harry loves Africa. I see in there, yeah, I think he loves Africa, so does Meghan. Steve says, I agree. They are good for this country. We are lucky. Guitar D'Souza says, if the Queen dies, is it the day after we all get a day off work? And does that turn into a bank holiday? No, that will be up to the government if they choose to have a holiday or a day to remember the longest reigning monarch that we've had, which they could do. So they could create, it's not without possibility that they could create a bank holiday. They could call kind of like an emergency bank holiday for the funeral, perhaps. They could maybe do that. Helen says, agree. Fuzzy Puppet says, as an American, I admire the royal family. It amazes me the monarchy has survived so long when others have fallen. That's because we turned it into a constitutional monarchy, and probably because the Queen has been so good at remaining impartial, and she's allowed the constitutional monarchy system to work and to flourish, and of course it has. Annette says, hello from Pennsylvania, USA. I know I'm at the tail end, but excited to be here. Hello, Annette. Yes, you are pretty much towards the end of the chat, but we have had a really amazing chat. And of course, if you want to go back after this and watch on catch up, please do. And I hope you can join us next time. Dawn says, I would love to see them here in Canada more often. I'm sure there's probably a next visit on the horizon somewhere planned. Beck says, Annette, Elliot is so diplomatic and fun to watch. You'll be addicted to this chat in no time. Thank you very much. I like the fact you call me diplomatic. I do try. I do try, definitely. So I think I've covered all the points that I had on my list to cover. Was there anything else you all wanted to talk about? I am going to check my Twitter. I did say I was. It's a little bit later than what I said. So yes, if you want to contact me on Twitter and send me anything, I am at royal_reviewer on Twitter. Please follow me and tweet me anything you want. And I've got 3 notifications since I've been doing the chat. Aha, Dawn sent me the picture of the teacup. So she has, so this is what she's been drinking. And it's to celebrate, it's a cup to celebrate the birth of Princess Charlotte Elizabeth Diana. So she's using her commemorative cup, and it's in baby pink. And I think it's one of the official ones. I seem to recognise it. And her tea looks lovely. So if you want to contact me, you can send me pictures during the chat. I will look on Twitter. Elaine is saying good night. So good night, Elaine. Hope you have a really good week. Guitar D'Souza says, why does Harry pretend to be some war hero when he has like 1 million troops guarding him and was never in real danger? He did take 2 active tours of duty. There was real risk. Of course, he would have had, you know, some royal protection while he was there. But of course, he was with, like everyone else, he was with the army. So they are their own protection, if you like. And he did take active role within those wars. You know, he did to take on actual duties, and in fact he didn't want anyone to know about it so that he could do it. In fact, if you all remember, he kept it hidden for quite a long time until eventually the media had to break it, and then he had to come home because of it. But he did do 2 tours of active duty, and there was some real danger. I have to disagree, there was. Dawn says, Elliot has been very diplomatic tonight. Good job. Thank you very much. Beck says you do very well. Thank you again. Nancy says, I'm signing off as well. Good night, friends. I will be going too very soon. I don't think there's anything else for us to say, other than if you are a member of the book club, we're going to read up to, I think it was page 90 something or 100 something? It was up to page 121 in the book club book. Annette says, I don't think they are the most active, hard-working royals who admire them. But you think they are the most active and hard-working, and you are addicted. Chelsea says, I don't have Twitter, but I only have Facebook. I also have Facebook. You can find Royal Reviewer on Facebook too. Dawn says, don't forget the time change. Ah, the time change. Yes. I do believe for next week there is an hour. Is it forward or back? I always forget. I did say I was going to look it up. I will let you all know. I will tweet it. I will put it out on Facebook. If there's going to be a time change for next week, an hour forward or back, I will let you know. But either way, if you type into Google 10 p.m. UK time, it will tell you what time that is for you, if ever you're in doubt. Fuzzy Puppet says, I've never heard Harry say he was a war hero. No, neither have I. In fact, just the opposite. He seems very modest about his service, but he does work a lot to support English troops. He does. Post his war career, he does so much in Victor's Games and Walking with the Wounded. So many charities he supports to do with the rehabilitation and support of British troops. So he does a lot of work. Beck says, please don't make me get up at 5 a.m. instead of 6. Do you have a time change where you are? Because it will probably be in correlation, if there is. Qatar says, thanks for answering my questions. You're very welcome. I will try to endeavour to answer any question. Dawn says, yes, it's an official cup brought over from England by effort. Yes, I thought it was. It's the one from Kensington Palace. I recognised it. Dawn says, bring ahead in time change. So yeah, so it could be an hour. It possibly is going to be an hour forward. So if where you are doesn't change, it will be an hour forward, but I'm becoming live. Aaron says, my parents said the national anthem was proudly played every night on TV at the cinema when each film ended. Wondered why this stopped. It's like everything, they've just become outdated. I would like to see that reinstated. I would also like to see a picture of a portrait of the Queen in every single school and government building. Annette says, bring forward, fall back. At least, yes, that's true. Beck says, no, in Perth we don't change. They do over Eastern Australia. Basically, for next week, because I don't know where you all are and whether you go forwards or back or no change at all, if before you come on, if you just type into your Google search 10 o'clock in the UK GMT, it will tell you what time it is for you. I will stick whatever time it is in the UK, it will be 10 o'clock and I will be here at the same time. So probably the best answer is for you to find out on the day what time that is for you. But I will try and put something out on Twitter and Facebook and all those social media accounts. Okay, and I think that's all for tonight. So thank you again for joining me. It's been fantastic as always. I think the screen's just gone a bit blurry. I'll just wait for me to come back into focus. So yeah, so thank you so much for joining me. As always, it's a great pleasure and a great honour to speak to you all. I really enjoy it. I will be back next week. Please have a look about the time change. I'll try and put something out. So until next week, I hope you all have a fabulous, voluptuous week, a very happy royal week. And from me in Shropshire, goodbye from me.